Super quick question here. How many tabs do you have open right now? If you're like me, it's a lot. And if you're running a business, it's a lot more. And with all those tabs, you're spending more time searching through data and less time, growing your business. But HubSpot's customer platform brings all your tools into a single powerful place that your teams can use together. So close those tabs. It's business growing time. Visit HubSpot.com to get started today. All right, it's Sunday, and you know what that means. I'm John Weigel, and this is the weekend edition of the Hustle Daily Show. New and legacy brands are both constantly looking for ways to capture an audience, and visuals are paramount in how a brand sells and markets their product. Design trends are always changing, and today we see tons of hand-drawn illustrations, simple maximalism, and creative fonts flooding the market everywhere. So how do we get to this point? Why does product packaging look the way it does right now, and what kind of design is proven to succeed? Today we're going to analyze and answer those questions with Mike McVicar, a partner at Gander, which is the design shop behind wildly popular brands like Graza, Magic Spoon, and much more. So let's get into it. All right, welcome, Mike. How are you doing today?
Doing well. It's a beautifully gloomy day in Brooklyn.
Yes, it is. I'm also in Brooklyn, so same skyline we have right here.
Nice, yeah.
So first of all, I wanted to talk about, namely, what Gander does for brands. Why don't we start there?
Yeah. So Gander, at our core, we are a creative agency, a branding agency. So in many ways, we follow the traditional practices, if you will, traditional as of like the last 100 years, of a branding agency. And that means that we build brands from the ground up. So that covers everything from brand identity, brand strategy, through packaging design, web design. Yeah, we kind of do everything. And so most brands come to us with like either having been around 12 years, 5 years, 2 years, or like prior to launch. Mm-hmm. And we do everything they need to go from where they are to like the next level of their brand. So we create brands and we launch brands. And we have a pretty wide range of creative skill sets. Someone can come to us and basically get everything they need for the most part. Yeah, so that's our vibe.
Yeah, it seems like a wide range of capabilities. And I also didn't know that you essentially help launch brands from the beginning. Do you tend to get more brands that are looking to start out and get their thing started? Or are you getting also brands that are legacy or older brands that are looking to kind of hit the refresh button?
We get a whole range, but I'd say a majority of the brands that have been coming to us, and especially recently, are new brands. So brands that are pre-launch or have only been around for 1 to 2 years. I'd say our sweet spot is actually brands that have launched, that have like a proof of concept and come to us for really going to market in a serious way. So maybe they have friends and family fundraising done, or they've launched a project for the first year. And that usually leads to a really good relationship and success in the project.
One of the brands that Gander has seemed to really make a big deal as of late is Graza. And, I, speaking from personal experience, I have a Graza bottle in my kitchen. Every friend's place I go to, at least in the Brooklyn area, has at least one bottle of Graza olive oil. So I'm wondering, how did you get involved with them? And I really don't remember seeing the brand before your design was packaged on it. So was it a brand that was out previously, or did you launch it as well?
It's cool to hear that you have Graza. I think the smartest thing they did was work with the mayor of New York to make it a required condiment for all of Brooklyn homes.
Very smart.
That was, so smart.
What a great idea.
Yeah, I highly recommend all brands do that if they can. We knew Andrew Bennon, the co-founder of Graza, through some mutual connections. He worked at Casper, and the previous agency that I worked at, we worked some on Casper, and I know some of the co-founders there. And then he went to work at Magic Spoon, and we created and launched Magic Spoon a number of years ago at this point. And I think Andrew was one of the first employees, if not the first employee, I can't remember. But because of our mutual connections in the CPG and just startup world, they came to us prior to having a name finalized. All he knew is that he wanted to put extremely high quality, fresh olive oil into a squeeze bottle. And we helped him take that idea through what you see today as a fully realized brand experience.
Yeah, it is very much fully realized, especially on my pasta. But what was the process like coming up with that design in of itself and kind of the marketing and everything behind the whole packaging, because it is very iconic and very much in line as well with your work at Magic Spoon and your work elsewhere. Even at Casper, I feel like there's a lot of crossover between these newer brands and how they approach design and how they deliver design compared to maybe an older brand from the 90s.
Sure. Yeah. It's definitely a contemporary experience. I could go really in depth about why that has happened and why that has happened in the grocery aisle and the grocery store in general compared to 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s. Really that what we look at is like a brand-centric company. So someone who puts design and brand identity and the power of brand at the forefront of their priority, right? Like the opposite would be like a maybe B2B brand that's like, we'll sell you paper cups and you won't know who the brand is, but the paper cups will work. And obviously that can be consumer facing as well. Sure. And there's plenty of brands in the grocery store that you may not even know the name brand because you just buy the rice and you whatever. And we call our approach brand-centric, brand building or packaging design or web design, whatever it is. It goes beyond just the function of that product or, just selling a product based on its product attributes or quality, which are table stakes when it comes to products these days. What's the difference between Poland Springs or whatever and a Dasani is very little difference, but there is a brand identity experience. But our approach with anyone that we work with is to kind of find their unfair advantage when it comes to the product and the industry that they're in. And our goal isn't necessarily to like go and create a cool, hip, trendy brand that might be a ideal outcome, but we really start with problem solving first and foremost. Problem solving comes from like understanding why your customer will love your product, what makes you different from like a product standpoint, so product differentiation, and knowing what your competition is doing and kind of identifying that white space that either runs in the same direction as those brands and does something different or runs in the opposite direction and really stands out through differentiation. And I think Graza had a whole lot of things that they were trying to do. And Andrew and the whole team there are really passionate about high quality olive oil. And the olive oil industry is so opaque and so messed up and so kind of like deceptive in a lot of ways. So you could get olive oil bottle that says like, Italian olive oil or like, for 30 years owned by this Italian family. Right. And, on the back of the bottle, it could say olive oil inside here might be from Portugal and Greece and Spain. It's like, but wait a second. And it's really an issue pretty distinct to the US and other non-European countries that we don't get the best quality olive oil. And then we end up getting like rancid or blended olive oil from all over the world or stuff that's not even olive oil. So they had a real enemy and a real mission of like what we're trying to take down is like this idea of like this kind of deceptive world of traditional olive oil that you can walk into the olive oil aisle and kind of see the same thing all throughout.
Right. Fields of olives, nice sun shining, maybe a farmer on the bottle. The bottle looks very old school. Yeah, it really breaks out that niche very well because it's this exciting packaging that's in also a squeeze bottle comparatively to a glass bottle or a giant plastic jug of sorts.
Right. Yeah, like faux heraldry, like fake coat of arms and stuff on there. And maybe they're not all fake, or at least they used to have a significance. And we wanted to create something that would stand out, but also fit in. There were 100 wrong solutions that we could have taken and we explored and all that kind of stuff. But we had to find something that fit within the world of olive oil and also was distinctly different. So we wanted to have fun with it, identifying that olive oil should be used liberally as a fun part of cooking. It shouldn't be something that you save on your shelf for 10 years and you're like, oh, that's my expensive olive oil. That's really not the way olive oil should be used. It should be used fresh and in large quantities. And so we wanted to kind of like make it easy, fun, approachable. And at the same time, we did a survey of a few hundred people about like their olive oil usage. And that's something we do with many of our clients. We help them either orchestrate a survey or analyze existing surveys of like, what are the real habits? Like, what's the opportunity here? And in that survey, we asked customers, what's the number one thing they shop for when they shop for olive oil? And they said they look for the words extra virgin olive oil. Everyone does. That's exactly what we wanted. Yeah. And the next question was, what does extra virgin olive oil mean? 0 right answers. I couldn't probably even tell you totally exactly what that means right now. However, it's the number one way people shop for olive oil. So that's an insight that we took from the survey, that we said, even though the idea of extra virgin olive oil is not super informative, it is a quality standard that exists, and it's how people shop. So we knew that even though we need to be antithetical to the category, extra virgin olive oil needs to be as big on the packaging as the name Sizzle or Drizzle, which are the two products that they sell.
Right.
And so that people can still identify them. So we need to give people a lifeline of like, this is what I need and want in my life, while also being kind of fun and playful. So that's how we walk the line of like, this is what other people are doing in the category. This is what other brands are doing in the category. And we can follow their lead in some ways, but also be totally opposite of them in a way that can stand out and be in a squeeze bottle and use colors that are more inviting and warm and that kind of stuff.
Right. So like a bit of a diversion, but not a complete diversion, in that you're keeping that core of what consumers want. And I'm sure a lot of research went into that, as you're saying.
Yeah.
And when you talk about also the style of the packaging as well, and like the design on the packaging, I've noticed that Gander, your studio, has a very specific kind of style. Like you really focus on the topography. Even in brands like Yellowbird that you worked on Mercado Famous, and of course Graza and Magic Spoon, they all have a very interesting like font identity. And I've been seeing that in quite a lot of packaging lately. But what is the specific style of Gander, would you say?
At the risk of sounding too like pretentious or art school theoretical, I'd say that we don't have an intentional style. We don't go and try to create something that is a preconceived outcome. What we do is we try to solve problems that our clients come to us with, and we try to answer them in a way that feels authentic and full of personality and life. And just like, you know, if you were a musician and you covered a AC/DC song on your acoustic guitar, it's going to sound very different from the original full electric, you know, rock and roll band version of that song. And that's actually how I think about design in some ways, like songwriting or recording music. If you focus on the craft and quality typography and beautiful color combinations and quality copywriting, and you genuinely solving a problem from your client, yes, there are some stylistic choices that we make. Obviously, we do like mood boards and we get very specific about the style that we're working on. But a lot of it is a natural outcome of our own personality and our own interest and aesthetic choices. And I think we align those with like smart decisions from a business and design perspective that allow for success. So I think naturally, my partner Katie and I were very fun, happy-go-lucky people that are pretty joyful and enjoy like colorful things. And so I think that comes through our work in a lot of ways. And it's a natural byproduct of just being who we are, which I think is the way we like to do it. We intentionally try to break out of our style as much as we can, or not repeat, you know, the same thing over and over again.
Sure.
And so we've worked in a lot of different industries, and I'd like to point to all the other brands that don't look similar in our portfolio. But, you know, I think when we're having a lot of fun and we're focusing a lot on craft and typography, which we're total nerds about, then it has a certain aesthetic. I think it's actually more about a certain production value, like the refinement and the quality of the outcome is more important to us than like a specific aesthetic.
I totally understand. And trying to change, like as you work for project to project, makes a lot of sense, diversifies the portfolio. I feel like I see brands a lot like Graza or, for example, Tony's Chocolonely out there, or brands like Casper or Notion that use this kind of new type of design that has become very trendy in like illustrations and such like that. What do you make of the designs that are on trend right now? What is every brand, do you think, trying to do right now?
We're going to get into deep philosophical design as well.
I love it.
Yeah, maybe it's not even that deep or philosophical, but design at its core is fashion. Fashion is fleeting. There's a reason that fashion from the 70s and 80s looked cool at the time, and some of the choices that we look back on, we're like, holy shit, what were they thinking? The shit I was wearing in like early 2000, you know, I cringe at now. But at the time, I thought it was really cool. Maybe one or two other people would agree with that. And that is just the way that we work as a society. Taste is a collective unspoken standard that shifts. It's a spectrum that moves through cultural influence, and even faster these days through the internet. And so I think that design is fashion. It is always in response to what came before. If we wear, you know, bell bottoms in the 70s, we're going to wear tight jeans in the 80s, or, you know, if we're going to wear Jinko jeans in the 90s. We're going to wear, skinny, tight jeans in the early 2000s. And, obviously all those trends aren't in direct response to each other, but you can see a clear spectrum of how things move. And so I think brands these days, you can't escape the people who are making them and what they aesthetically feel looks right. And if I like something and you like something and we make it together, it's going to be reflective of our taste. And I don't think that's avoidable. And we generally aim for timeless design through quality execution and through things that don't feel too vapid or like pointless.
Sure.
And I think that's the difference between timeless and trendy, if you will. I think when things get overused, when an Andy Warhol shirt gets printed 1,000 times and now it's like something similar is on sale at Walmart and
sure,
it's really devalued in its aesthetic quality or maybe exclusiveness or whatever it is. It's great because it's available to more people. But once it becomes commercialized and done in a way that is removed from the initial intent of that design, I think that's when it becomes trendy or it becomes like, glossy. And I think people who are on the cutting edge of design or art are already past that aesthetic and move on to something new. And that's kind of the way design works as well. And so I think that current trends in design usually are in response to what came before. So blanding was something that happened in the 2010s and early 2000s of this idea of like really simple design and really like streamlined packaging and all these types of things, and even like tech brands. And I think there was a big push against that, against blanding, to go kind of extra. Like what if it was like over the top with color and typography and all these things? And I see a real trend with color, especially these days. And I think those trends are great because they are a response to something that may not have been working before or could have been working better in another sense. But I think in 3 years, it's going to be on to something else.
Yeah. And if you could make kind of a forecast about what that next thing is, do you have any guesses?
I do think it's a pendulum when it comes to design. So right now you're seeing a lot of brands use a lot of color and a lot of combinations of color. And it's aesthetically really interesting because you can create a wide range of color and flavor or categories or digital products, and you can use all sorts of fun combinations. But I think what can happen in that sense is that you lose a sense of ownership of your brand for what our color palette is. And brands are like, well, what color do we use as our main color logo? Every time we launch a new flavor, it's a different color packaging. Sure. And I think that will probably be pushed back against, and we'll probably go back to a little bit more simplistic colors, or people owning a color might be a thing that happens again, rather than going kind of really wide with our color palettes, which I think is happening a lot these days. So I think that's one trend. I think that I'm already seeing this trend in packaging, where photography on packaging is really being taken to the next level, where in the late 90s, early 2000s, whatever, it just generally with food packaging through all of history, people used photography to represent the food on the pack. And for the longest time, it was really bad photography and it didn't look very appealing. And so people kind of pushed back against that trend in recent years to say, like, no, we don't need to use photography. People understand what's inside this box, and that's great. But then also people might need to understand what's inside this box. And so there, I think a much more recent trend to use photography, but then utilize some of our more recent tools and even CG, computer generated imagery, that allows us to like create really idealized imagery. And so I think we're going to see more and more brands using much better photography on packaging, even though it's not something that I like initially lean towards as like a good solution. I think that's something that will probably happen. And there's a lot of brands that are doing that, I think, to an effective degree.
Do you think that there's any piece of advice or key to have a successful brand design in 2024? Are there things that will definitely get your product out there and purchased?
Ooh, well, that's a different question.
Oh, okay.
There's good brand design, and then there's good ways of getting it out there and getting it purchased.
Wow, I'd love to hear both.
There's two different things. Unfortunately, you can have a gorgeous design and no one will see it and no one will buy it. I think there are some really great strategies for marketing and for partnerships and promotional that almost any brand can take as a lesson for when they're launching a product or launching a tool or launching a food item, whatever it is. which is working with partners as much as possible. So if you can get your product into 400 influencers' hands or 400 shop owners' hands, those are going to be the people that speak the most highly about your product. Assuming it's good, assuming it's high quality, word of mouth is the modern social media. I'm not the first person to say that or no real interesting insight there, but like social media is word of mouth. We care about people, what they wear, and what they eat. I bought a shirt that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson himself was promoting.
Oh, nice.
And I think many people would look at me and think, you have a body type a lot like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And I would agree. And that's why I thought the shirt he was wearing would fit me really well.
Same size and
Perfectly.
everything. It just, yeah. I mean, most of his shirts look mad to be on him. They just,
It's mostly in the bicep range that we have similar
makes
arms.
sense. I was going to say, I didn't want to overstep, but
So if Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is promoting this, then surely the shirt will look good on me. And actually using his example of Terramana, his tequila brand, is a great example of like a celebrity at the helm of your brand really can take it off. But no, I think truly getting your product in the hands of as many people as possible is an X factor. So in whatever way you can do that, maybe you need to start at a farmer's market. Maybe you need to start with local businesses, who might like your product. But I think Graza is a great example of how coming out of the gate with a large number of people promoting your product, they sent out 300 or something bottles to influencers and restaurateurs and chefs and people who would like their product. And luckily, a lot of people really loved it. It's one of the best tasting olive oils. Like Wirecutter chose it's the #1 olive oil you can buy in stores. You can't pay for that review. So your product has to stand up to it, and critical for success is that it's a high quality product. So getting it out there, getting into people's hands is part of that. When it comes to brand building, I think that's a very different thing. #1, I would say work with Gander. That's the #1 insurance for your success.
Gander and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, ultimate combination for you.
With our powers combined, we can make this happen for you. I think that working with a branding agency is a massive way to have high production value out of the gate. So that's the difference between working with a branding agency and working with, a freelancer or just doing it on your own, is like, what kind of production value are you looking for from day one? When I say production value, are you an indie film, or are you a blockbuster? Are you a short film on Vimeo made by an independent film producer on their iPhone? Or are you going to be, the next Wes Anderson film? And I think that's why people work with branding agencies, is to take their ideas, their brands that maybe already exist or have a really good, clear idea of what they want to create, and launching with a clear sense of alignment of your brand identity, your packaging, your product, and your customers' needs. And that is that kind of massive advantage of product market fit, looking as high quality as you want people to perceive your product as. And so if you're going to be working with a branding agency, making sure that you're focusing on strategy and intent, not focusing on aesthetic. Aesthetic, again, as a byproduct of the people you're working with, your aesthetic, society. You can choose the right visual cues, but if you're not focusing first and foremost on your story, on your customer, and what they're looking for and need to know about your product and what they want out of your product experience, then you're just going to have a trendy designed packaging that people don't understand what it is and just looks cool. And so I think if you can really focus on strategy, storytelling, customer fit, like all those types of things can really take your brand to the next level. And that's why working with experts is a good idea, or using these strategy exercises to do it on your own, to really figure out how you want to show up in the world and what production value you want that to be.
Yeah, one last thing I wanted to know about Gander is how the studio is evolving, how the agency is changing. What's next for you and the agency?
Ooh, that's a good question. It's a hot topic for us these days. We're constantly trying to figure out where we're going as an agency. I don't think it's any secret that like the creative agency world right now is struggling in a lot of ways with funding from venture capital and other investors really tightening up, and with generally finances for companies, whether they're small or large corporations, tightening up, and people taking a lot fewer risks, which I would say that working with a branding agency is mitigating your risk, but spending money is seen as a risk, I guess. So it has been difficult as an agency over the last couple of years to win new projects, keep the momentum that we would like to keep as an agency for growth and those types of things. So we're always exploring new ideas. We have some very interesting projects coming up that are self-initiated. Cool. Some projects we've been working on for a number of years. I'm not going to say too much right now, but we are working on some products that will hopefully be out in the next year or so that Gander created and Gander designed. And we have a couple that are like kind of in R&D right now. Wow. And so we hope to have some different revenue streams. We hope to continue working with great brands and working with bigger and bigger brands and having fun doing that. We're really focused on working with people that we align with from a value standpoint, and we want to continue doing that. And then we also want to try our hand at creating some products that we like and hope other people will as well.
Yeah. Well, it sounds awesome, Mike. Congratulations on everything so far and good luck with everything in the future. And yeah, it'll be really exciting to track what you all do next.
Thanks. Really appreciate it. Thanks for your time. Thanks for asking me to chat.
Of course. All right, and that'll do it for us today. Thanks for tuning into the Hustle Daily Show. We're a proud part of the HubSpot Podcast Network. Our editor today is Robert Hartwig, and our executive producer is Darren Clark. We've got a lot more tech and business coverage in our newsletter. If you're not subscribed, go get signed up at thehustle.co/email, and we'll see you tomorrow. Hey everybody, I've been listening to this awesome podcast lately called Entrepreneurs on Fire. It's hosted by John Lee Dumas, and it's available right now on the HubSpot Podcast Network. Entrepreneurs on Fire stokes inspiration and shares strategies to fire up your entrepreneurial journey and create the life that you've always dreamed of. It offers lots of energy, value, consistency, and it's for anybody who wants to learn more about entrepreneurship. It's super fast-paced and packed with valuable stories about entrepreneurs, their aha moments, their failures, and everything to what's working for them today. Recently, he had on this guest, Ashley Stahl, who talked all about her job at the Pentagon and how she evolved into becoming a top 100 TEDx speaker. She talks about evolving your brand from the ground up, leaning into the skills that you already have to build your brand, and also creating virality. It's a great listen. You should check it out. And you can listen to Entrepreneurs on Fire wherever you get your podcasts.